The views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of Paltalk.com, AVM software, or its advertisers.
News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users, on demand on iTunes and on YouTube and on my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com, where you're encouraged to post your comments whether you agree with moi or not. And thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we're syndicated to an additional 12 million households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten. I welcome you to the show. Well, yesterday, Israel's Consul General in New York, Asaf Sharif, was our guest. Today, we hear from the Palestinian point of view, and there are developments, as there are every day, with this Israeli incursion into the Gaza, because now there are troops on the ground involved in combat on the streets of Gaza City. That is a new development since we were together yesterday. Today, my guest is Hussein Ibish. I believe I'm pronouncing your name right. If not, I'm sure you'll correct it.
It's Ibish, actually.
Ibish, thank you. I just put the emphasis on the wrong syllable. Hussein Ibish is Executive Director of the Foundation for Arab American Leadership. He is Senior Fellow at the American Task Force on Palestine, the former Communications Director for the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee, which is the nation's largest Arab American membership organization. He is a regular contributor to the LA Times. He has written for the Washington Post, Philadelphia Inquirer, Houston Chronicle, Boston Globe, and other papers. You see him often interviewed on CNN, Nightline, Hardball, CBC, BBC, Fox News, over 3,000 radio and TV appearances. Mr. Ibish, welcome to News Talk Online on Paltalk.com.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you, Mr. Baumgarten. Thank you very much.
No, the pleasure is all ours. So I presume that your viewpoint about this issue is completely different from our friend who joined us yesterday, who believes that this is a defensive maneuver on the part of the Israelis, who have, in the last year alone, received 3,000 rockets fired from the Gaza into Israel. And they believe that what some are calling a disproportional response is absolutely proportional because the intent is to stop the rockets from flying again.
Yes, I completely disagree with the second part, and I largely disagree with the first part of that two-part analysis. Let me say, first of all, that it's very difficult for Israel, really seriously, to describe anything that it does in the occupied Palestinian territories in the big picture as defensive, really. I mean, these are occupied territories. Israel is the occupying power. It's required by a very large number of UN Security Council resolutions to withdraw from territories like Gaza. Now, 3 years ago, under Ariel Sharon, Israel did conduct a unilateral redeployment of troops, so that was not ending the occupation. It was unilateral. It wasn't pursuant to any agreement. And by its very designation, the words that Israel itself used to describe it, that is to say redeployment, it tells you everything you need to know. That there's a big difference between a redeployment and a withdrawal. So you've got an occupied territory here, and but at the same time, I do think there is a point to be made about rocket attacks against Israel. I mean, I think that they're reckless, they're provocative, they're incredibly stupid, and they were sort of bound to produce this kind of result, given the way Israeli politics tends to go, Israeli discourse, etc. Israel historically doesn't do proportionate and responsible. It does disproportionate and wild retaliation to what is perceived as attacks. So that's one thing. There is no question that this is disproportionate. We had a number of incredible atrocities, the massacre at the UN school, another unbelievable massacre at a building where civilians were ordered to congregate. Over 100 of them were ordered into a building by Israeli soldiers on one day, and the building was shelled and fired at the next day. And the people, the survivors, including a lot of children wandering around the corpses, were left sort of to fester The relief service is not allowed to get to them for several days. And now, apparently, the use of white phosphorus munitions in densely populated civilian areas. So it's quite a grim picture. On the other hand, I would say that both parties here, that is, say, Hamas and Israel, can make the case to their own constituents that what they're doing is entirely self-defensive. And the Israelis can say, look, they're firing rockets at us. What the hell? What are we supposed to do? Of course, we're justified in taking whatever measures to protect ourselves, and taken in a vacuum, out of context, it sounds very convincing, because, of course, Israel and everybody else has the right to self-defense. The problem is Palestinians also have a right to self-defense, so Hamas can turn around and say, well, of course we are firing rockets. What do you think? We're occupied people. We're surrounded. We're besieged. We can't leave. We can't go. We can't bring anything. So, what can we do? We have to resist. And once you accept the logic that the other side did X to us, therefore we are justified in doing anything, Y, Z, anything you like, to them because of that casus belli, because of that provocation or that reason, then you enter into this landscape of violence begetting violence. And I really think it's in the Palestinian interest, the Israeli interest, and the American interest, and pretty much everybody's interest, that we get out of this. And the way out is to get back as soon as possible to negotiations between Israel and the responsible Palestinian leadership, that is the Palestinian Authority and the PLO, which is authorized by every known Palestinian and Arab document to negotiate with Israel, and that should be done immediately and with a great seriousness of purpose, because if an agreement is not concluded, this is just going to happen again and again.
Well, it's interesting. Much of what you said is contradictory to what our guest said yesterday, but I will tell you that one thing that you, Hussein Ibish, and Asaf Sharif would agree upon is that negotiations should resume as quickly as possible between the Israelis and the Fatah, the Palestinian Authority. And
the PLO. No, let me be clear about that. That's a very important point. It has to be the PLO. It is the PLO, which is different than Fatah. Fatah is a political party that is one part of the PLO. But it is the PLO that is formally, officially